I don't think we've ever seen this before.
All right, the preliminary report on Air India 171 has just been released. It was released at midnight on Friday night at the very last minute.
Oh,
to the general
the plane
public.
crash thing. Hold on,
last night and this morning
Chat,
to go.
I just want to see what it says at the end.
Listen, it's just kind of a heads up. There may be an issue. Take a look at it if you want to. It's not any big deal. It's no safety of flight, but it's a bulletin, and we want you to take a look at it. Can't vibrate out. It stays in there. Why? Because it's spring loaded into position, but and place it over the detent and let it go because it's spring loaded. They are then going to grab the other.
Wait, it was premeditated.
Spoiler alert: the plane crashes.
Huh?
One and do the exact same and let go of it. That whole transition takes about a second in between.
Wait, the pilot did it? What? Dude, that's fucking awful. No shot, stop.
Air current in the Reuters report that talked about the fuel control switches being placed to cutoff. That is consistent with what is in this report. In addition to that, there is some amplifying information about the timing of all of that. You can draw your own conclusions. In a preliminary report like this, they don't generally come to a definitive reason for why something was done. They just tell you the somethings that were done, and then you can draw your own conclusions. Now, the final report may be a year or two away. In that report, many times they will go to the why part of it and try to come up with a definitive reason for why. But I think it's pretty clear from this report exactly what happened in that cockpit.
Chad, but just look on the chat, this is the plane that had only one survivor, right? Air India, 171. Where it barely took off, right? And it went straight down with the thing that went out.
June the 12th. So let me begin at the top of the report, and then I'm going to amplify some of the information for you. It's absolutely fascinating, all right, and especially the conversation back and forth between the two pilots, because now we have the cockpit voice recorder information. That's something that Reuters and Wall Street Journal didn't have. So the background is this: on June 12, 2025, that was just last month, Boeing 787 operated by Air India out of Ahmedabad to Gatwick Airport crashed about 60 seconds after takeoff. It was AI-171. We know all that information already. They assembled a team almost immediately, and over in India, it's the AAIB. It's their Aviation Investigation Board. Then they brought in the NTSB from the United States. You wonder, well, why did they do that? Well, because it was a Boeing product that was involved, and so they'll always bring in the country of manufacturer origin.
For sure.
So they invited the NTSB in addition to that. There were citizens on board from the UK, Portugal, and Canada. So they also invited the Canadian TSB and some others in to help assist with the investigation. The final team that was put together consisted of the NTSB from the US, technical advisors from Boeing, and GE. Why GE? GE was who produced those engines. So the engines on the wings were General Electric engines and the FAA. So all of that team with all the other players put together were assembled. The next page tells us who was in charge of the investigation. All of the local Indian authorities with all of their names are listed. And then underneath of it is a very interesting paragraph. And I'm going to read this next sentence.
Chad, this is like a logistical disaster to have so many fucking cooks in the kitchen, though. So many different, I'm assuming different kind of protocols, code, different agencies at the same time. It's like insane.
I don't think anybody else has highlighted this or is talking about it, but I think it's absolutely germane to the root cause behind what actually happened in this crash. And here it goes. Experienced pilots, engineers, aviation medicine specialists, aviation psychologists, and flight recorder specialists have been taken on board as subject matter experts to assist in the investigation. Why in the world would they bring in an aviation psychologist to help with this investigation? I think that's absolutely critical and important to where this is going. I think a year from now, or whenever the final report comes out, I think the aviation psychologist is going to be a huge player in the final conclusions. What this tells me is this: once they downloaded the information from the flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder, it was clear that one of the two pilots, one of the two human beings in that cockpit, placed those fuel control switches from run to cut off. And so therefore, I think having a psychologist involved in this conversation is hugely important. That's one of the reasons why we're going to open up a conversation on this channel going forward about the mental health and certainly the emotional health of pilots. In fact, we're going to do an interview here in just a few minutes after I get done with this video. We're going to bring in Dr. Charlie Carreri. Charlie is the absolute expert in this area of mental health for pilots. He is a pioneer in the field. He started a program called Project Wingman at my airline. Project Wingman now has been exported to many airlines around the world. Charlie is the guy that has spearheaded that effort. And in fact, Charlie sat on the investigation board for the German wings crash, which is very similar in scope to this crash here. So we don't know yet for that interview later on this week. But let's continue on with the preliminary report. Over on the next page, it says this: all applicable airworthiness directives and air service bulletins. The difference between those two is this: a directive is something like a recall in a car. It's got to be done. So they will schedule the maintenance on that, and they will replace whatever it is. A bulletin is just kind of a heads up. There may be an issue. Take a look at it if you want to. It's not any big deal. It's no safety of flight, but it's a bulletin, and we want you to take a look at it. There was an airworthiness bulletin directed about a 737 issue related to the fuel control switches, and they lay it out down here in the next paragraph. The FAA issued special airworthiness information bulletin, all right, that's the lesser of the two, on December 17th back in 2018 regarding the potential disengagement of fuel control switches in the locking feature portion of them. The bulletin was issued based on reports that operators of Model 737 airplanes, this is not the 787, but they are a similar type switch, the 737 airplanes, that the fuel control switches were installed, keyword, with the locking feature disengaged. All right, so let me show you a picture now on the screen of what the locking feature is. It's just a little piece of metal that's flat on one side and it's rounded on the other. The switch now that is spring-loaded gets grasped by the pilot's hands, it gets pulled out, and it gets placed on top of that little flat piece of metal. When the two engage, that's the detent that holds it in place, and it can't jiggle out, it can't vibrate out. It stays.
So it's made so you don't hit it by accident or something happens that it bumps it or whatever the fuck. It has to be a deliberate thing that you have to really like, this is what I want to be doing to do it, pretty much.
Why? Because it's spring-loaded into position, but it's also held by that piece of metal. If that whole mechanism were installed upside down, which it could be, you couldn't actually put the fuel control switch into the run position. Why? Because it would slide off every time. It wouldn't lock into place. It would slide off. So if it was installed backwards, you would know that immediately. Apparently, they had some installation problems. This is just my theory on what this is talking about. It was installed probably backwards or improperly, and they knew right away. Was that an issue on the 787 and Air India 171? No, it wasn't, because it's been working just fine. There were no issues with it as far as we know from any report, official or unofficial. So with that being said, take that for what it's worth, all right? But there was some wiggle room put in here for the fact that the fuel control switches might not have locked or engaged properly. I don't think that was an issue at all in this incident. Now, continuing on, I want to take a look now next at, and there's lots of
go back to that part
about
later.
the crash and how the airplane landed and what buildings it hit and what part of the airplane hit first and second and all that. I want to go to the data now from the data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder, because this is the play-by-play, second by second, what took place in that cockpit, and it starts from the takeoff roll. So let me begin there.
Chat.
According to the flight
Chat.
data...
No disrespect to anybody, chat, but something I've learned, I feel like, from some of the trials we've watched, like the Amber Heard shit, is that I listen to experts. I know they're experts, okay? But just because somebody's an expert doesn't mean they're not biased or they're not altered in one way or the other. I'm just saying. I'm not saying this guy's biased. I'm just saying I'm not going to full gospel on this guy. I think getting multiple point of views is important because, dude, there's experts that are skewed sometimes.
Quarter, the aircraft crossed the takeoff decision speed of V1 and achieved 153 knots of indicated airspeed at 080833 universal time. So 0808 is the first time marker on this report. What is V1? That's the go, no-go speed. If you get to V1, you're going to go flying. You're not going to stop on the runway ahead of you. If you're prior to V1 and there's some engine failure, fire, whatever it is, and you're going to abort or reject the takeoff, you can do so in the remaining runway. You're going to stay on the ground. So they're past V1 now. So they're committed to go flying. They're at 153 knots. The V1 speed of 155 knots was achieved as per the flight data recorder at 080835. That's just 0.2 of a second, 0.02 of a second later. All right, the aircraft air-ground sensor transitioned to the air mode. I talked about that on yesterday's video. When you're on the ground, you're in the ground mode, and things are blocked out on the ground. For instance, if I were to inadvertently grab
I think if V1 is a stage of flight, right? It's like there are stages, like when you start up, boom, you're at a certain speed, all that. I think that at that stage, if there's no options to stop, right? And like not like you can't do anything. Like you're going, like you're committed to going in, buddy. I'm talking to this guy Jeff because he asked. I have to explain that. I'm just telling you, like there's nothing you can do after V1. It's GG. You are going up
and try to raise it. Could you raise the landing gear on the ground? No, you're on the ground. The airplane knows that. That's blocked out. It won't let you do that. Could I deploy the rat on the ground? No. If I cut off both fuel control switches in the air, the rat would deploy. On the ground, no, you don't want that to happen because every time I go to the gate and I set the parking brake, I cut fuel to the engines. So we want the rat to stay up. So air-ground, the air logic is now in the air mode, consistent with liftoff at 080839. The aircraft achieved a maximum recorded airspeed of 180 knots, indicated airspeed, about 080842. This is just tenths of a second later.
Chad,
and immediately...
Chad, the rat is the thing that kicks in so that it uses the air to generate some power when the fucking there's a power failure thing.
Thereafter,
I think.
watch this. The engine 1 and followed by engine 2 fuel cutoff switches transition from run to cutoff. Position one after another with a time gap of 1 second. Why is that significant in our theory that it was done by one of the pilots? Let's say for some reason they just weren't in the detent properly, which is not a thing, but they were, and the airplane was vibrating. And I've heard some people talk about, did they just vibrate out of that position? They would have done so probably at the same time. The fact that they did so 1 second apart from each other is consistent with how we start and how we cut off the engines. So I'm seated in my seat over here, and let's say I'm the first officer. The fuel control switches are to my left. The first officer always starts and shuts off the engines. That's their duty. As the captain, I would instruct the first officer to start the engines. At that point, on the ground, the first officer is going to reach up to the start switches and turn them to start, and then reach down to the fuel cutoff switch, which is in the cutoff position, lift it up and place it over the detent and let it go because it's spring-loaded. They are then going to grab...
No, lift it up, meaning he's going to boom, bang. Chat, we're still talking about the boom, bang, and not the cling. Boom, bang, right?
The other one and do the exact same and let go of it. That whole transition takes about a second in between the two. 1 second is absolutely consistent with engage, engage. That's how it works. All right. Now, when we get to the gate and we go to shut them off, I will set the parking brake. I will say to the first officer, shut down the engines, please. He will take, or she, we'll take that first one, usually the left side, right? Because everything we do on airplanes is from left to right. The number one engine, the number two engine. We read from left to right. It's just natural. So we're trained to do that. So you grab the left one, cut off, right one, cut off. 1001, 1002.
Wait,
it takes about...
Wait, the graphic is doing it wrong. The what?
To do that. So you grab the left one, cut off, right one, cut off. 1001, 1002. It takes about a second to do all that. So this is very consistent with what we think to be true so far, that a human being actually put them to cut off. They were positioned one after another with a gap of 1 second. The engine N1 and N2, those are the turbines inside the engine.
Oh, they probably had the graphic designer do one thing, and they just reversed it for the sake of example.
Where we're getting a reading of how much power we're getting out of the engine. Both of those now begin to decrease from their takeoff values.
F?
As the fuel supply to the engine was cut off. So when you put those two switches to cut off, it cuts off a valve in the engine and it cuts off fuel completely. The engines begin now to spool down, and we read that on N1 and N2. The pilots are going to hear it in their ear before they see it on the instrument in front of them. That's important. I'll come back to that in a second. In the cockpit voice recorder now, one of the pilots is heard asking the other, why did he cut off? Why did he cut off? Right? So now, if it had been just a mistake or somehow the fuel switches had vibrated into the position, you wouldn't turn to the other person and say, why did you do that? Right? You would say, what just happened? Or why did that happen? But you wouldn't say, why did you do that? Right? Why did he cut it off? So here's what's going on.
No, because he saw him do it. Wait, no, because he saw him do it. Like, he probably saw him do it, and he probably was like, yo, maybe he's doing something else. And when he heard the thing say on the thing, he went like, what the fuck? Why did you do that? That makes the most sense.
You're flying down the runway. You get to rotate speed, so the other pilot calls rotate. You're the pilot at the controls. You pull the nose back of the airplane, and you're using your peripheral vision almost exclusively at this point. Why is that? Because when you pull that nose up, all you're going to see above you is sky. You have no visual reference of anything. So now your peripheral vision watches the ground outside the airplane do like this as you're lifting off, and you've got a normal rate of climb that you're expecting to see happen. In addition to that, you're going to transition your view down to the scope in front of you, or the screen in front of you, that basically shows you're lifting off the ground at a normal rate. So all of those things are happening at the same time. Your peripheral vision is going to pick up anything that's not normal, and if the person next to you reaches over, on this side, the first officer reaches over and grabs the fuel control switches. We don't know who did it, whether it was the captain or the first officer. It really doesn't make any difference at this point. One of the pilots did. The other pilot is going to see it out of the corner of their eye. At first, it's not going to register. You're going to go, what? What was that? Right? And then you're going to hear it. And that's the biggest...
Hold on, Jason, you didn't explain to us. I don't understand. I don't get it. There's two pilots, and he would do it on the left. But what if the guy is on the left is doing it? Where is this console? To the middle? No?
You're going to hear those engines begin to spool back. At that point, you're going to go, whoa, wait a minute. Did I just see what I thought I saw? That takes a split second. You're going to turn to the other person, and you're going to say, why did you do that? Now, whatever comes out of the mouth of the other person at this point is really kind of irrelevant. I think the report here goes on to say that after he said, why'd you cut it off? He says the other pilot responded that he did not do so. I have 8 kids, and every time I caught my kids red-handed in something...
No, that doesn't make any sense, though. Hold on. I know he's going to explain it, chat, but guys, if that happened, and he knows that he got the feedback from the machine, he's gonna fix it.
Now we confront them with it, they would say, I didn't do it. All right. I don't think what comes out of the other pilot is relevant to this. There's only 2 people in that cockpit, and one of them saw the other do like this and heard the engines roll back. There is no procedure anywhere in the history of aviation where immediately after rotate, you grab both fuel control switches and place them to cut off. There simply is not. This was not a mistake. This was something that was done intentionally. So with that being said, it's consistent with 1001, 1002. The pilot now at the controls, or maybe the other pilot, maybe it was a pilot flying that did it, we don't know. Looks, confronts the other pilot. You're going to go naturally back and look outside the airplane for a second. Maybe you're going to push the power levers up. That takes a second or two. You got to work through denial for a couple of seconds. And then at some point when you see it registers with you what's going on, you're going to instinctively reach over and grab those fuel control switches and put them back in the run position.
Yeah.
That happened here.
Oh,
so
okay.
all of that, when they were placed to cut off, the rat deployed about 4 seconds later. That's consistent with how the rat works. That's why we saw the rat. And then the pilot now says, as according to the flight data recorder, both engines N2 values passed below the minimum idle. The rat deployed at that point.
Oh, no.
Now,
At that point, they couldn't, like, kick them back into fucking high gears. It's too late for fucking, it lost too much momentum.
now it goes on to say that the engine 1 left fuel cutoff switch transition from cutoff back to run at about 08852. All right, and this is 10 seconds later. So 10 seconds after they were cut off,
Did we watch
they were placed,
the Nick
both of them were
Crowley
placed
video?
back.
Hold on, chat. Hold on. At this point, now I'm wondering. Hold on. Don't get mad at me for this. I'm just asking. During this transition from V1 to V2, if this is so critical, right? Why do you even have the option to remove the fuel thing? Shouldn't there be a system that blocks it from happening until you turn to like manual or something like that, and then you can do it? It seems like, why would you ever do it? Doing from V1 to V2, this is suicide. Why even have a suicide button on? It should be a button that engages a manual mechanism, then enables that to be flipped up. If there's a crazy fire or some shit or some oh man.
I think they were placed back to run 2 seconds apart from each other. So that would be consistent with 1001, 1002. He puts the one up, looking outside, okay, grabs the other one, puts it back up. At that point, the way the airplane is designed, it's designed to introduce fuel again to the engines, but also spark. You don't have to reach up and grab those start switches anymore. It's airborne, and it knows that you want those engines immediately, so it's going to give spark and ignition, and it's also going to give fuel. It indicates here that that both engines did light off, that they arrested the decay of the spool down of the engine. Engine number 2 fuel cutoff was also transitioned to run. We know that already when fuel control switches are moved from cutoff to run while the aircraft is in flight. Each engine's full authority dual engine control, the FADEC, right, automatically manages a relight of thrust recovery sequence and ignition of fuel introduction. All that's taking place right now. The EGT, what is that? The exhaust gas temperature. That's the one of the ways that we measure how much power is coming out of the back of the engine, was observed to be rising for both engines, indicating relight. So they both relit, and that's good news at this point. Engine 1's core deceleration stopped, reversed, and started to progress to recovery. So that we've stopped the decay, and we're starting to get a little bit of power out of this engine. Engine 2 was able to relight, but could not arrest core speed deceleration, and reintroduce fuel repeated to increase core speed.
At that point, even if there's a little bit of stall momentum, you would never get enough power to fucking, like, it has to be a complete nice curve. At that point, it doesn't even fucking matter. Like, it's an airplane at the beginning. It's GG anyway.
Acceleration
that was GG.
and recovery.
The second
that
they did
engine
it.
never produced any positive thrust, and it was the 2 seconds later that it was behind engine number 1 at about 080905 UTC. One of the pilots transmitted Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. The air traffic control inquired about the call sign. No further communications came from inside the aircraft. So the initial report that everybody was reporting, that there was a Mayday call from one of the pilots saying that they had lost thrust, or thrust wasn't...
Last pause. I have a question, chat. If the guy had done that, and again, what the fuck, bang, and instantly put it back in, would it have changed anything? If they were to test that in a simulator, if they remove it and instantly back in, do they survive? My dumbass brain says it doesn't change anything, but I don't know.
Doesn't appear to be true. This is just mayday, mayday, mayday. That's all they got at that point. At that point, one of the engines had begun to spool up. The other had not yet. It was too late. There wasn't enough thrust coming out of those engines, even though the pilot let's assume the pilot at the controls grabbed him and put him back to run. What a brave, heroic, and valiant presence of mind thing to do when you're going through what is an unthinkable situation shortly after rotate. The presence of mind of that other pilot is absolutely incredible, in my opinion. To grab those fuel control switches and put them to run was absolutely the right thing to do. If they'd had a little more altitude, they might have gotten some more power out of those engines and climbed out of it. It was too short a flight for that to happen. We know now the rest is history. The airplane collided with the buildings off the end of the runway. All that is very tragic.
Yo, if I'm gonna fucking die going down to this shit, yo, I'm picking up the fucking module. You go, yo, air tower, motherfucker. This motherfucker sabotaged. This fucking loser cuck fucking did this shit. Fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. Maybe they fuck this guy. Like, dude, I'm not gonna go down without fucking saying some shit about this fucking bum. This bum did this shit. I need to know this fucking bum did this shit. Like, are you kidding me?
These are the preliminary facts in the finding. You can draw your own conclusions about whether it was they vibrated out of the position or they were actually placed there by a human in that cockpit. We don't know which human. But we're transitioning on this channel to talk about the mental health and the emotional health of pilots. There's never a bad time to have that discussion. So even if you don't agree with my conclusions on this and what I think happened, it's always a good time to have a discussion about the mental health and the mental or the emotional well-being of pilots who are occupying a very important job in a very stressful situation. So there it is. There's my analysis of the preliminary report. You can draw your own conclusions. Look for that video later on this week where we're going to interview Dr. Carreri. It's going to be an absolutely fascinating discussion.
Okay, my current understanding of this, intentional. It seems like they didn't release the transcript. They're giving the thing that happened or whatever, right? It's not full transcript. It kind of matches the story. It matches the story. So that removes all type of like, oh, it flipped it by accident or some shit. My shirt got tucked into it, and that removes everything because there's a discussion with aligns with the series of events of the inputs that are in the fucking recorder. So it'd be hard to have another argument at the point that it wasn't that.